Hello, welcome to the video lesson on register, which is part of your paper on language and linguistics. Register is also a part of a particular branch of linguistics called sociolinguistics, which deals with the social aspect of language. Some of you may have already watched the video lesson I prepared on dialect and idiolect. That is very closely connected to the concept of register as well. Those of you who have not watched that can watch it later. I will put a link to that video at the end of this one. So, what is a register? Registers are stylistic, functional varieties of a language, usually associated with one's occupation. And a person uses a different register in each instance when communicating with his or her spouse, parent, children, colleagues, students, teachers, etc. സോ രജിസ്റ്റർ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ലാംഗ്വേജിൻ്റെ ഒരു വെറൈറ്റി തന്നെയാണ്. പക്ഷേ അതിൻ്റെ പ്രത്യേകത അതൊരു സ്റ്റൈലിസ്റ്റിക് വെറൈറ്റിയാണ്. ഇൻ ദ സ്റ്റൈൽ ഓഫ് യൂസിങ് ലാംഗ്വേജ് അവിടെയാണ് മെയിൻലി വ്യത്യാസം വരുന്നത്. ആൻഡ് ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് ഓൾസോ ഫങ്ഷണൽ വെറൈറ്റി, ഒരു പ്രത്യേക ഫങ്ഷൻ ചെയ്യുന്നതാണ്. ഒരേ ആൾ തന്നെ ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഡയലക്റ്റ് ആൻഡ് ഇഡിയോലക്റ്റ് പറഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ നിങ്ങൾ ശ്രദ്ധിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടാവും, ദോസ് ഓഫ് യു ഹു ഹാവ് വാച്ച്ഡ് ഇറ്റ്, ഡയലക്റ്റും ഇഡിയോലക്റ്റും ഒക്കെ ഓരോ ഇൻഡിവിജ്വൽസിന് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഓരോ ഗ്രൂപ്പ്സ് ഓഫ് ഇൻഡിവിജ്വൽസിൻ്റെ പ്രത്യേകതയാണ്. പക്ഷെ ഒരേ ഇൻഡിവിജ്വൽ തന്നെ പല സിറ്റുവേഷൻസിൽ, പല കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റിൽ, പല രീതിയിൽ ഭാഷ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നതിനാണ് നമ്മൾ രജിസ്റ്റർ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. And registers are sometimes also associated with one's occupation. So for example, there is a particular kind of language that is used by journalists. If you look at news reports, you will see that they have a particular kind of language. That is the register of that news report or of that particular profession of journalism. Lawyers have their own certain jargon and certain ways in which they speak. That is their register. Similarly, in a classroom, there is a particular way in which teachers and students interact. So that also has a certain set of registers to it. So from this, you would have understood that a person uses a different register when communicating with their parent, and a very different register while communicating with their spouse, their husband or wife. Very different register again while communicating with colleagues. So if you talk to your parent and you are going to say the same thing, like maybe you want a particular book, you want them to pass you a book, but if you're speaking to your parent, you will use a particular register. If you're speaking to your sibling, you will use a different register. If you're talking to your friend, you will use a slightly different register, which will be different. You won't talk to your friend like you talk to your brother or sister, right? And again, if you're talking to your teacher, you will use a slightly different register. So register basically refers to the stylistic varieties in a language, and they are used for different functions or different purposes in different contexts. There are certain factors affecting register. ഏത് രജിസ്റ്റർ എപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നു എന്നുള്ളതിന്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഏത് തരം കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റിൽ നമ്മൾ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നു എന്നുള്ളതിന് ചില ഫാക്ടേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ട്. ദ ഫസ്റ്റ് ഫാക്ടർ ഇസ് കോൾഡ് സബ്ജക്റ്റ് മാറ്റർ ഓർ ഫീൽഡ് ഓഫ് ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ്. എന്തിനെ പറ്റിയാണ് നമ്മൾ സംസാരിക്കുന്നത്, അതാണ് നമ്മുടെ സബ്ജക്റ്റ് മാറ്റർ. അതിനെ തന്നെയാണ് ഫീൽഡ് ഓഫ് ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ്. ഏത് ഫീൽഡിനെ പറ്റിയാണ് നമ്മൾ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്, ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് നടത്തുന്നത്. സോ അതിനനുസരിച്ച് നമ്മുടെ രജിസ്റ്റർ മാറും. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ, സയൻറ്റിഫിക്, religious, legal, commercial, etc. So airport announcers, for example, they will have their own particular way of speaking. Telephone operators, they will have a different way of speaking. Railway station announcements, you would have heard, they all have a particular way of speaking, including the modality of their the way they speak and the certain kind of specific words that they use, etc. So ഓരോ ഫീൽഡ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഓരോ സബ്ജക്റ്റ് മാറ്ററിനനുസരിച്ച് നമ്മൾ എന്തിനെക്കുറിച്ചാണ് സംസാരിക്കുന്നത്, നമ്മൾ എന്ത് കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റാണ് സംസാരിക്കുന്നത്, ആ സബ്ജക്റ്റ് മാറ്റർ അനുസരിച്ച്, ദിസ് ഇസ് കോൾഡ് ദ ഫീൽഡ് ഓഫ് ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ്, ഇതിനനുസരിച്ചും നമ്മുടെ രജിസ്റ്റർ മാറും. സെക്കൻഡ് ഫാക്ടർ ഇസ് ദ മീഡിയം ഓർ ദ മോഡ് ഓഫ് discourse? Are we speaking or are we writing? And even if we are speaking, what kind of speech is it? When we discussed formal and informal language, we already mentioned some aspect of this. So, are you having a conversation with a friend? Are you having an academic discussion or a debate? Is it a news TV discussion? Is it a lecture that you're giving? Is it a talk that you're giving? All these are different types of speech, but each of them will have a different register. So, depending on your mode of discourse or your medium of discourse, you will have a different register. Similarly, with writing, even if you're writing, suppose you're writing a personal letter to a friend, then you will have a particular register. If you're writing a biography, that will have its own register. If you are writing a poem to be read, then that will have its own register. If you're writing a play that is supposed to be staged and watched rather than read, then it will also have its own register. So, your medium, speech or writing, and the mode of discourse, what specific type of speech or what specific type of writing it is, these also affect the register that you choose to use. The third factor affecting register is the level of formality. This is also called the style of speaking, and another way of putting it is the manner of discourse. എങ്ങനെ ഏത് രീതിയിൽ നമ്മൾ സംസാരിക്കുന്നു, manner of discourse depends on the level of formality. That is based on the relationship between the people having this conversation. So even if you're talking about the same subject matter, for example, you're talking about religion, in various situations, then it would be very different. Because each situation would call for a different level of formality. So if you are in a temple and talking to a priest about religion, then that would be an extremely formal, that would have its own manner of discourse, it would have its own register. But if you are somebody who is studying religion in an academic manner and you are presenting a paper on religious practices at an academic conference, then you will speak in a slightly different way. Both will be formal, but in a very different way. Now again, suppose you are sitting in a restaurant with your friends and you're discussing certain religious practices or certain aspects of religion, you will be talking about it in a much more casual manner, because the space is also different and the people to whom you're talking is also different, which means that there will be a much lower level of formality when you are having this conversation with your friends. So even when you're talking about the same subject matter, and even when you're using the same mode of discourse, whether it is speaking, in all these contexts we're talking about different ways of speaking. Talking to a priest, speaking at an academic conference, or having a conversation with friends, all these are the same mode of discourse, but still, because the level of formality in each situation is different, the register will be different. So these are the important factors affecting register: the field of discourse, also known as subject matter, the mode of discourse or the medium of discourse, and the manner of discourse or the level of formality required for that discourse, for that discussion. Now we will look at the different types of register. Sometimes, generally, we tend to think that there is only formal and informal registers, and we've already mentioned, we have already studied the specificities of formal versus informal language. But most linguists say that you can divide register into 5 different types. The first type is called the frozen or a static register. Frozen means that ഐസ് പോലെ ഇങ്ങനെ ഫ്രീസ് ചെയ്ത് വെച്ചിരിക്കുകയാണ്. you can't move it. Static, not dynamic. Again, static means not moving. അപ്പോൾ ഒരു രീതിയിൽ തന്നെ അത് മാറാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നില്ല നമ്മൾ. Frozen or static register means the register that is used in a communication that is intended to remain unchanged. For example, the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Constitution, etc. Maybe some great canonical text like a work by Shakespeare, etc. Though that is a little debatable, but still, let us, for example, look at the Bible. The Bible, the words in the Bible and the things that are said in the Bible, the language of the Bible is supposed to remain unchanged because it is supposed to be the word of God. Similarly, the Constitution of India, you can't just randomly insert a word or take away a word, because this Constitution is a very important document which is supposed to remain unchanged mostly. So when the kind of language, the variety of language that is used for such communications that are supposed to remain unchanged are called frozen or static register. Then, so that is the most formal type of register. The second type of register is called formal register, which is again very formal but slightly less formal than the frozen or static. So the kind of language used in a religious text would be called frozen or static, whereas the kind of language that is used in professional, academic or legal settings where communication is expected to be respectful, uninterrupted and restrained, this is a kind of register which we would call a formal register. So for example, there is a class, a text, a lecture, an encyclopedia which you are reading will have this kind of formal language. Your textbook will have this kind of formal language, etc. So these are used in professional or academic settings, and the communication is supposed to be very respectful. So if somebody is giving a talk, the audience is supposed to listen to it respectfully without interrupting. Whether or not they agree with the speaker, they are not supposed to interrupt the speaker, and only at the point when they are supposed to give feedback or ask questions, that is only time they can ask questions, and even then they have to do that in a very respectful and restrained manner. Such communication is called formal communication or formal register. The third type of register is called consultative. This is again slightly formal, but it is much less formal than what we call the formal register. Consultative language or the consultative register is used in conversation while speaking with someone who has specialized knowledge. It is both respectful in tone like the formal register, but yet it is much more casual. So for example, if you're speaking to a doctor, the doctor is somebody who has specialized knowledge. So you will talk to the doctor in a very respectful tone, but it will be very different from how you present a seminar in class, for example, right? Or if a plumber comes to your house to fix the tap, you will speak to them because they have a certain specialized knowledge. They are a professional who has come to your house. So you will talk to them in a slightly respectful way, but yet it will be much more casual than you talking to your principal, for example. Then again, the news TV broadcasts, or now we see a lot of chat shows and talk shows on news television. All these will use this kind of consultative language. So many times we will see that the person who's presenting the show or the news show will have a guest or a series of guests with them, and they will consult those guests. They will ask certain questions to those guests, and those guests will be people who are well versed or who have specialized knowledge in some particular area. So maybe one is a government officer, another person is a representative of a particular political party, somebody else is a social activist, etc. So when all these people become part of the conversation, then they are all, each of them is a person with specialized knowledge. So the talk show host or the news host will speak to them in a consultative register. The fourth type of register is casual. Now this is the kind of very casual language that we use with our friends, our close acquaintances, those that we are very close with, and co-workers and family. So people that you work with, whom you meet on a very everyday level. Every day you meet them, you have food with them, etc. They may not be close friends, but still they are your co-workers or your close acquaintances. The people with whom you travel together on the bus, for example, every day when you come on the bus, you come with certain people. They may not be your classmates or they may not be your close friends, but you board from the same stop and you get down at the same stop. So they are your close acquaintances. So you talk to them in a very casual manner. And of course, your family. Now, interestingly enough, the casual language can be used. Many times it is used in a group. So you can have a casual conversation with an individual but also as part of a group of friends, acquaintances, colleagues, or family members. Casual register is defined by the use of slang. So you might use a lot of slang words, contractions. Like when we mentioned formal and informal language, we talked about the use of contractions. So casual language is basically informal language, so you can use contractions. And then you can also use vernacular grammar. അങ്ങനെ ഫുള്ളി ഗ്രാമാറ്റിക്കൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള സെൻറ്റൻസ് ഒന്നും നമ്മൾ യൂസ് ചെയ്യില്ല. ഫ്രണ്ട്സിനോട് സംസാരിക്കുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ വളരെ കാഷ്വൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഗ്രാമറാണ് ഉപയോഗിക്കുക. An example, for an instance, when we use casual languages, for example, a birthday party, or any kind of such social occasion. There is a birthday party of somebody in your class, and you talk to everybody in a very casual manner. So some of them may be your close friends, some may be just acquaintances, but still you will use a very casual manner of speaking. That is your casual register. The fifth and the last type of register is called the intimate register. This is reserved for special occasions, usually between two people, and it is often very private. So some examples for that would include an inside joke between two college friends. So this is maybe not the kind of joke that you can make with everybody. You can only make that joke with somebody who's extremely close to you. You have studied together in college, or you have studied together from school onwards, and you know each other very intimately. So you can have a joke which other people may not understand or other people may not appreciate, but it is something very intimate between the two friends. And then, of course, the kind of words that are spoken between lovers would be very intimate. But also, suppose you are not feeling well and your mother comes or your father comes and tries to comfort you, the kind of register that is used at that moment is also very intimate. So intimate is always reserved for special occasions. Even your mother will not use that register with you every moment when she is talking to you. Now, most of the time she'll talk to you in a very casual manner. But if you are feeling ill and she is comforting you, or at certain special occasions, she will use that language with you. Or even with your friends, you will use that kind of intimate register only for special occasions. And what also distinguishes intimate from casual language is the fact that while casual language can be used in groups, as we mentioned, intimate language is usually used between two people. If you have very close friends, maybe 2 or 3 people, but usually not more than that. Usually it is between 2 people, and often the things that are said using this intimate register are extremely private. So we can see the different types of register, from frozen, formal, consultative to casual and intimate. You can see that there is a certain descending order of formality here. Frozen or static is the most formal. Then we have formal. Then we have consultative, which is kind of a middle path between the formality and informality. With casual, we become much more informal, and with intimate, that is the most informal way in which we can speak. So these are the 5 different types of register. I hope the things I have said in this video are clear. Thank you so much for watching, and you can also watch the video on dialect and idiolect if you have not done that so far. Thank you so much.